Welcome back to our Thursday edition here on Channel 6 News. You know, much in the media these days has been, well, on the subject of swine flu. A lot of people have been talking about it, as we heard on our program yesterday. A lot of the cruise ships are no longer visiting Mexico. They're routing their cruise ships other places. A lot of people are concerned. They don't want to visit Mexico or travel there. There's a lot of interest and concern around the country on this whole subject of flu, and specifically the swine flu. Back with us on the program today, Dr. Timothy Ho, one of our fine doctors from Kaiser Permanente. Dr. Ho, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You practice family medicine, which means little kids to us older folks, everybody in between. You're sort of the, I don't want to compare you with Marcus Welby, but that idea of the family practitioner.
Yes, that's true.
So you deal with all kinds of issues, including things like colds and flu.
Yes, that's true.
All right, let's talk about, first of all, who might be at risk. Are we as a population looking at a pandemic?
Well, there is definitely reason for concern, but not panic at this point. The real issue is that swine flu typically infects pigs, but it actually has infected humans, and it actually appears to have made that critical switch where it now has the ability to go from human to human.
Mm-hmm. We've seen on the news quite a bit of coverage on it. We've even seen some airports around the world are using heat sensor cameras, so as people walk by going to or from an airplane, they see who's got a overly warm body temperature. They pull them out and take their temperature. I guess that's one of the first clues that you might be sick, is your temperature would be, what, about 100?
Right, so we're looking for folks with fever, but we're also looking for folks who have other symptoms such as a cough or sore throat. And you actually should see your doctor if you have those symptoms, along with other criteria such as a history of a visit to an affected area, or in contact with someone who visited an affected area, or if you're part of a group with the same symptoms, or you've actually been in contact with someone who's had swine flu.
Obviously, at this time of the year, there's lots of our cruise lines are cruising back and forth to Mexico, or they were until earlier this week. What kind of incubation period? If somebody cruised, say, a month ago or 2 weeks ago, could they still be at risk?
Well, we're saying that contact 7 days before your symptoms is a critical period.
So if you've been back for 2 weeks or a month, you're probably, if you're not sick, you're probably not going to get sick from this.
Probably not.
Probably not. At least you didn't pick it up in Mexico, perhaps, at that point.
Right.
Are there certain either age groups or people with certain diseases that are more at risk for this?
Well, seasonal flu, it's important to remember, is still an issue. In fact, seasonal flu, or regular flu, has actually taken the lives of 13,000 people since January. However, it appears that this swine flu doesn't really distinguish for age, and in fact, most of the cases have actually happened in the middle age group.
So it's not little kids, although the first death in Texas, I think, was a child who had visited Mexico, though, so had been down there.
Right. Typically, seasonal flu or regular flu is more of a risk for children or older folks, but it appears that the swine flu doesn't have that ability to do that. Those
in the pork industry are campaigning very hard for all of us in the media and for you in the medical profession to change the name of this. Is there a scientific term? We used to hear, you know, the Hong Kong flu or the Asiatic flu in years past. Is there a more scientific name for this than swine flu?
Well, the scientific name for it is H1N1.
There we go.
And it basically describes a type A influenza virus. It's important to remember, actually, you cannot catch swine flu from eating properly handled and properly cooked pork.
Okay, so people that want to not eat carnitas because they're one from Mexico and two made with pork.
Right.
If they've cooked them properly, they shouldn't have to worry about all of that. So I guess the concern would be if we have a persistent cough, we seem to have a fever, it seems to be more than just the average cold, might be a good time to contact the doctor.
It might be a good time to contact the doctor. The reason why is if you have some of the other criteria that we already went over, it would be important to get on medication that is available, and also to actually get a sample taken that can be submitted to the health department. Now, of course, it's important to understand that those criteria need to be met in order to get the medication and also to submit the sample to the public health department.
We saw earlier yesterday a press conference with the governor and some medical officials here in the state, and they were talking about, one of the reporters asked about Tamiflu, and they were saying they were getting a supply from the CDC from Washington, D.C. Is that something the average person should A, try and buy, and B, kind of store at home?
Well, in general, we don't recommend that at this time. Tamiflu is really reserved for folks who actually are sick. There are certain cases where Tamiflu is prescribed prophylactically, and that's more to folks who are traveling to affected areas. At this time, the CDC is actually recommending against travel, non-essential travel to affected areas.
Right.
So really, there should be no reason to take Tamiflu
Right.
unless you have symptoms.
In that case, that would be the doctor's decision. So we shouldn't all try and go to the pharmacy and try and talk him into a couple of days supply or something as a preventive. It's not really a good preventive, I guess.
Right.
How about the flu shot? A lot of people had flu shots last fall or this winter. Does that protect them against this H1Y1 flu that you talked about?
The H1N1.
H1N1, thank you.
And actually, that's a very good question. And in fact, it appears that the flu shot that we all received for the 2008 to 2009 seasonal flu season does not protect us against the swine flu.
All right. So I guess the best thing to do is do preventative. And I guess there's some things, you know, anytime you go into a fast food restaurant or really any restaurant, you go in the washroom, the restroom, there's a little sign usually by the sink, and it's primarily there for the health department encouraging the employees to do this, but it's a reminder to all of us as well to wash our hands.
Right, prevention is the best thing, and one thing is thoroughly and frequently washing your hands, making sure that you sneeze or cough into a tissue and washing your hands afterwards, or sneezing or coughing into the fold of your elbow or your sleeve. Also making sure that we avoid touching surfaces that can be contaminated and avoiding touching our eyes, nose, or mouth. Also avoiding people who might be sick or close contact with people who might be sick. And finally, making sure that we stay home and avoid work or school if we're sick ourselves.
You know, we all sometimes pride ourselves on playing wounded, and this is not the time to be a hero. If you work or if you're involved in community activities or volunteering at your church or teaching at a school or visiting your grandkids, if you're really sick, this is a good time to stay home and not share the flu with them.
Right, if you're sick, the traditional therapies are probably the best thing, and actually one of those is rest. And so you'll do yourself a favor and you'll do others a favor if you do stay at home instead of going to work or school.
So the usual things: rest, stay warm, drink lots of liquids, and avoid contact with your fellow humans, and you'll get over it usually, what, a week or two?
A few days, yes.
Okay. What about flu shots for the winter of 2009, 2010? How early should we think about those, and do you recommend those for all your patients?
Well, final decisions haven't been made for that season yet. Manufacturing will probably start this summer, and the shot will be available in the fall. There's going to be a lot of controversy if the flu vaccine for swine flu will be included in the flu vaccine, or if it will be a separate vaccine for the 2009-2010 season. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right, we'll wait for I guess the CDC ultimately makes the decision on that.
And also WHO or World Health Organization.
Right, and then again, it's an individual decision on the part of the patient and with consultation with their doctor. And I know some doctors recommend it for all their patients. Some say if you're in a certain risk group, it just depends on the doctor and the person's individual health, I guess.
Right, and so that discussion should be held with the doctor, but there are certain recommendations for high-risk groups.
Yeah, right, including those who work in school. So if you're a volunteer at your grandkids' school, you might want to think about getting that flu shot this year. Dr. Ho, thank you so much. Good to have you with us in the program again today. Thank you for dropping by. Good to have you with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Again, that's some good information for all of us at this time, and perhaps some in the media have overblown this. It's probably no riskier than the regular flu. In fact, in some cases, less risky. So again, wash our hands, stay out of contact from other people, and if you are sick, stay home. And some good tips there from Dr. Ho. Our program for Thursday continues here on Channel 6 right after this brief timeout.